This is Nicole Sauce from the Holler Homestead giving you a woman's take on the walk towards independence because we're living free in Tennessee.
Hallooly, everyone. Today is Monday, April 24th, 2017, and this is episode 33 of Living Free in Tennessee, and I am coming to you today from a place called Highland Rim Retreats near Fall Creek Falls in Tennessee. I am way up on a hill above the cloud line, which is kind of nice, especially after the last 2 days of arc building level rains that we've had here. That's right. Mark and I were able to step away from the homestead for a few days because we've met some awesome farm sitters, and so far nothing has died from what I understand. Now, there have been a couple of exciting little things go on, like yesterday I believe the ducks went missing for several hours, and not only did the house sitter get to go look for them, but luckily our friend Ford down the street, his family came over and helped, and Willow came over and helped, and we learned something about the little jerks because they were right by the house, bedded down in some tall grass, and our male house sitter, when he called for them, which if you want to call for my ducks, all you do is you say, duck, 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 and they go, rah, 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 rah. So, you know, they respond to that really well. They respond when Mark does it, but apparently they don't listen to strange men. They are very sexist girls, and they will only listen to a woman when she says, duck, duck, duck. So the minute we had a female go over there and call for them, they showed back up, or they at least alerted to where they were. And it kind of makes me regret having trained them to my voice rather than a duck call or whistle. So I might see if it's possible to teach my ladies to come on a whistle so that when we have a male house sitter staying there, they can also find the ducks in a situation. He's convinced the ducks hate him, but they don't really hate him. They just don't know him, and they didn't see a reason, I guess, to answer. So because of the epic levels of rain we've been having, I think we were a little afraid they may have found somewhere new to swim. So luckily, everything's great at the homestead, and that's freed Mark and I up to come out to this beautiful resort at which we had a credit to use up, and we brought his parents out here just to enjoy a little time away before diving back into the spring busyness. Anyway, today I thought it would be fun to do something a little different from the last few episodes. You know, you can really wow people with your cooking by doing little things, like sometimes the little thing could be making cocktails with fresh herbs, or, as is the topic of today's show, make some homemade salad dressing. The little things like using homemade salad dressing really add a message to the food that you're cooking, that you care about it. And really, the stuff in the stores, which I will admit, I buy bottles of salad dressing from time to time, they also tend to come with strange chemical sweeteners, and the price of buying those, $3 and $4 and $5 and $6 bottles of goop really can add up over time. All you really need to do to make fantastic salad dressing at home, or awesome sauce, as I like to call it, is keep a few basic ingredients on hand. So I'm going to walk you through my idea of what the 5 core elements of salad dressing are. I'm not sure if there are 4 or 5 elements, if you think of this like the chemical elements, the table of the elements that we all learned in chemistry, right? There are 5 flavors that work well together. Sometimes, though, I do make a salad dressing with only 4, so I'm wondering if one is really elemental or not, but I think it probably is. So it's like the periodic table of the salad dressing elements is what we're talking about today. Anyway, before we dive in, remember that you can shoot me a question, comment, or show idea to me via email, NicoleSauce@gmail.com. That's NicoleSauce@gmail.com. Or if you can't remember that, just head over to livingfreeintennessee.com and use the contact form to reach out. I've gotten a few messages recently, and I do have a request in on covering home brewing, how to do home brewing. And I think we'll probably queue that one up sometime soon. I wanted to talk to some of my other friends who do home brewing because I'm only one perspective on that topic, and I haven't done a lot of it recently just because I've been prioritizing other things. So maybe we'll even turn it into an interview with one of my home brewing buddies, and we can chat about all the things we've learned over the years making beers and wines and meads and all of those sorts of things. Also, really quickly, I have a correction from last week. I sometimes mix up words in my head. My memory or my brain doesn't work like most people's brains. It operates very quickly, but something that can happen when it's going a mile a minute is it chooses a word that's like a word that's not the right word. I do this with coffee. The pea berry is that coffee bean that's at the very end of the branch. There's only one bean in the coffee cherry, and I will call it a pea body. I don't know why. It starts with P. It's like I know better. And I did that when I was talking about a friend who has an awesome sustainable permaculturally farm in Washington State. I said hydroponics. The reason I've never done hydroponics is when I looked into hydroponics, you have to add a bunch of inputs to the system. You're adding a bunch of chemical fertilizers to the water that circulates to your plants, and that looks very unattractive to me. He does aquaponics. I meant to say aquaponics. I was thinking about fish in my head, but I wasn't. So an aquaponics system is it's almost a closed system. You may have to add things from time to time, but not chemical things. There's very natural ways to do it. And you have fish living in a big tank, and they are eating the waste from the plants growing and eating bugs and whatnot and pooping in the water. And then that poop basically turns into fertilizer, which you circulate back up through the plants. So it's a system that's sustainable. And my philosophy is if I don't have to add a chemical, why would I, right? So the reason I've even gotten interested in aquaponics is that when I discovered aquaponics or started learning more about it, I realized I wasn't going to have to buy a bunch of weird chemicals to add to the system. So my bad. I said hydroponics meant aquaponics, and he kind of reached out to me. He's like, no, I don't do that because that's not good. I was like, oh yeah, you're right. You don't do that because there's no way you do that. Anyway, let's dive into our regular segments. First up is Eating Seasonally and Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we just share with you how we're eating what we have put away and eating what is available at the time. And I have my first comment for this week is that rotten potatoes smell really bad. I did not get into my root cellar in time. I kind of skipped it for a couple weeks. And I know this time of year, you really need to go through it probably a couple times a week, especially in Tennessee where the temperatures are coming up. And the way that my root cellar is built is not a proper root cellar. It's not 100% underground. So it tends to fluctuate a little more than somebody who's built one the right way. And so I went in there and guess what? Yeah, you guessed it. And one rotten potato makes everything else go bad. So gross, goopy, got rid of it. And there is nothing like that smell. It's that smell that, I don't know if you've ever had this happen. You walk in your house and you're like, what's that smell? And sure enough, middle of a bag of potatoes, there's one bad. Yeah, that smell. It is also time for the quarterly freezer reorganization. I'll probably get that done in the next 2 weeks. This time, I am really doing a major purge because it's spring and a good time to use stuff up so that when we head back into hunting season, we can have room for things. And basically what that is that I am, despite all of my best intentions of keeping notebooks, not always good at keeping up on them. So about once a quarter now, I'm going through my freezers and pulling, 10, 12 things out that we need to prioritize, putting them in my kitchen freezer, and then we just build our meal plans around those. I know this sounds really funny to some of you, like, why is she talking about a freezer audit? Well, I think it's because many Americans have forgotten the art of eating up there. They either don't have any food at all in their house, in which case if they had, torrential rains and flooding and no internet and power out like we did this weekend, they end up in a bad situation, or they end up with the thing in the freezer that's been there for 5 years and lots of stuff that they spent money on and never ate it, which is not also ideal. So it's kind of a reminder that maybe you should look through your own freezers and pantry and say, okay, what do I have? What meals can I build around these to use them up as we cycle through? It's funny that is a oft forgotten skill, and some people are super at it. Like my stepmother rotates through her stock in a very methodical way. I'm not that methodical. So what I have set up for me, because I'm a little more scattered and kind of creative as a person and don't always, pay attention to the schedule I've set for myself, I've set up a quarterly audit where I get it done anyway. And it's a great way to keep your grocery bills down and avoid, having to waste the food. Next up, we are seasoning a pork belly for bacon. That's right. It's making bacon time. And this one the way you make bacon, I'll do a whole episode on that. I'm not going to go into that. Anyway, we're seasoning this one with rosemary, sage, turmeric, brown sugar, and of course, salt. And we'll let that just crust on there for, a week or two, and then smoke the thing over hickory and peach wood and see how that tastes. But it is definitely time. And though I am on vacation right now and I'm not actually doing that today, I will be doing that on Thursday. So just getting ready to do another pork belly so that we don't have to have the unfortunate time when we go to the store and buy bacon. Why buy bacon if you have a belly? We're also eating out of the garden now. So our garden has started producing food for us, and this makes me super happy because store lettuce is disgusting, just so you know. I'll eat it if I have to, but we've got garden kale coming on, and that's only through the blessing of some volunteer kale plants. And we have lettuces and arugula. Cilantro hasn't really done that well for me this year, so I may start that inside and just keep it inside because it's about to be too hot for cilantro. Pea shoots. Here's a fun one. If you grew peas this year, what's happened to them, hopefully, is they've been climbing up a little trellis. Well, like the top 4 to 6 inches of your pea vine, you can just trim that off and eat it right in your salad. It tastes just like peas, and it lets your vine bush out a little bit. It's not a bad idea. Hairy vetch, that's a wild one. Tastes like peas as well, as a matter of fact. It has a purple flower. Make sure you know what that looks like so you don't make a mistake when you harvest it. Red buds are coming on. They taste like nothing, but you can eat the flowers of red buds, and it kind of makes your salad look pretty. We also have baby bamboo shoots. Say that 10 times fast. So like the little ones poking up for the year. I have a big stand of black bamboo over at our other farm, and the bamboo shoots have been poking up for a while. And you've all had bamboo shoots in Oriental dishes, right? Okay, so you get those, you steam them up, you eat them. They're good. They're free. They grow prolifically. By the way, if you need black bamboo, just let me know. If you're in the area, just let me know. I've got plenty of it. Wouldn't mind actually beating some of mine back that's taken over the world. And then, of course, just like last week, we've got pokeweed poking up. The morels are out there, my friends. A good friend of mine looked like he found about 5 pounds of them in his favorite spot last week, and he sold them, $3 a pound. He sold them pretty cheap. But morels are poking up. It's been rainy and sunny. The mayapple plants are up. Apparently, you can find them kind of near mayapples, near oak trees, that sort of thing. However, I never find morels. This is so aggravating. I'm totally going to get some spores and start some of my own because I have been looking for morels for many, many, many years. Now, I have to admit the last 7 days have not been conducive to me tromping through the woods, but still, you would think with all the other wild mushrooms I find, I would occasionally find a morel. No siree, babaroony. I do not get to find them. So maybe next year will be my year. Maybe I'll still have a few more weeks to find them here. Who knows? Anyway, if you are a good morel hunter, get out there, guys. Go find some mushrooms. Next up, we have what we are preserving this week. This is where I share with you sort of what's coming off the land and how we're saving it for winter storage or for future storage. So it is tea leaf drying season for me. And right now I'm pulling off blackberry and raspberry leaves off the young shoots and drying those. The stinging nettle is just about done, but we're bringing it on. And my bee balm is about 3 feet tall, which is a great time to get the leaves. I will also pick the flowers and dry them later, but all of those things work well together with some rubus leaves or some peppermint. The peppermint is not ready for me to harvest it yet. We've been going through weather ups and downs. So that's not coming on yet. But right now I'm not even using my dryer. I'm just harvesting them and putting them on trays in my house to dry them out. So, and I might run the dryer. Like if I had been home this weekend while we had all the rain and the humidity, I would have totally ran the dryer here in Tennessee because the humidity in the air was not great. But I dry those and then I put them in jars with moisture eating packets and seal them up and store them that way. I used to be really persnickety and vacuum pack them and store them in the freezer for the whole season. You know what? I use my tea up every year by the end of the year. So what else? They store fine in a mason jar if you have thoroughly dried them with a dry packet. Just fine. I know some people have vacuum canners that can vacuum pack mason jars. I wish I had one, but I'm not willing to buy one right now. So that's how I do it. I don't even use like the vacuum packer attachment on my my vacuum packing machine, VacuSeal or whatever that thing is. So it works great, and it's really, it's just a nice homey feeling to make teas out of things you got off your own land and processed yourself. And if you can't, those are some key elements for great tea. Like I like to take about 2 tablespoons of rooibos tea and about 5 blackberry leaves, a half handful of stinging nettle and 5 bee balm leaves, and put them in a whole pot of tea and let it steep for about 2 minutes. It's yummy. It's a good tea, no caffeine. Maybe I've had too much today, as you can hear in my voice, but it's calming, and it's a nice way to enjoy a beverage without it being an alcoholic beverage, or without it being a caffeinated beverage, or without it being a sugary beverage. I add a little dollop of milk to mine, and I tend to brew a stronger pot of tea for that reason. And just it's nice to sip on that and enjoy the world going by. This week, there is no garden economics update or getting the gardens ready update because, frankly, there's nothing to report. It's just, I'll tell you why later. Anyway, now on to the main topic of the show, the 5 elements that make up your salad dressing. And let's start with why in the world is Nicole Sauce talking about salad dressing? And what does it have to do with homesteading? And guys, this isn't just a way to win friends and influence people by showing off your cooking prowess. This is actually a skill that if you learn it, translates into a lot of different things. I mean, first of all, if you're making your homemade salad dressings, you're going to have yummy salad dressings, and you're going to be eating well, and you're not going to be spending a lot of money on expensive salad dressings. So it's something that's just a way to bump up your home quality of food, which, I mean, for me, that keeps me from wanting to go to restaurants and spend more money on my meals. It also just, it doesn't take that much time, honestly. It's not like I spent 8 hours making salad dressing. It's not like homemade pasta, which is a huge investment of time. It's something you can do that's relatively easy, that just adds a quality to what you're eating every day that's kind of nice. It also will give you a much deeper understanding of how sweet, sour, spicy, and salty complement one another, and what that means for which vegetable you're cooking. And this translates into almost anything you cook. So the flavor choices you make for your evening salad dressing each day, you'll start learning from that. And with that, you'll start saying, okay, well, I'm doing a roast, and I kind of liked that honey mustard dressing I made. What would honey mustard taste like as a glaze on this roast beef? Oh, you know what? I'll want a little more bite. Maybe I'll add a little horseradish. So it just gets you thinking about spices in a little bit different way, and that helps all your cooking. And then, a salad dressing, making salad dressing being easy is something that if you do anything at a farmer's market, a good way to gain market share is to do cooking demos. And a really easy cooking demo to do is how to make salad dressings. You just find a recipe you like, show people how to do it, and then, choose one that complements the vegetables you're selling that week. Make mixed packets it's just a way to get interest and people start seeing you as a food coach. And when people see you as a food coach, they're more likely to buy the things that you're producing in that situation. So I think salad dressing is really easy to learn. I think it has a lot to do with homesteading, even though it's not, all about the goats I'm raising or eggs I'm trying to sell. So these are the 5 core elements that we use to set the foundation of salad dressings we make here. The first one is something sour, and I'll just say vinegar. So it adds a sour flavor to this salad dressing. Another flavor is spicy. Mustard is spicy. Garlic is spicy. A third element is creamy. A lot of people use mayonnaise in salad dressings or sour cream. That's creamy. Sweet. Honey. And an emulsifier. The emulsifier holds things together. This is your olive oil. Okay, so those are the 5. Sour, spicy, creamy, sweet, and an emulsifier. Now, what of those always need to be in there? Any ideas? I actually don't think any of them, not even the emulsifier, has to be there all the time, although the emulsifier would be the one I'd choose. But combinations of those will bring out the other ones of those in any salad dressing. So then how do you proceed? This is what I do. When I'm cooking dinner, I go, okay, what's in our salad today? Oh, okay, I see what's in the salad. Now, what's the predominant flavor of that? Is it a nutty spinach? Is it a light blank iceberg lettuce? Is there a bunch of corn, peppers, and pickles in there that have strong flavors of their own already? Like, what is the flavor coming out of the salad we're serving? And there are so many options for that, especially as you start eating more and more raw vegetables. Like, you can grate up a sweet potato and make that as the base for a salad. So, what is that core flavor? And with that in mind, you choose the flavor from the 5 elements that will probably complement that core flavor. Make sense? Let's give an example. Watercress. You guys have been hearing about me eating watercress like all the time. At this point, the watercress, by the way, is up to my hips in our creek. And it tastes, I like how it tastes, but most people don't like how it tastes because it's overwhelmingly peppery. But watercress and a kale-based salad would have been something I was eating 2 weeks ago. And the core flavor there is lightly spicy. It almost tastes like radishes, and the kale kind of pulls the edge off that a little bit. Okay, now what do you think would complement a salad that's already spicy? And if you look at the 5 elements of flavor, you got sour, spicy, creamy, sweet, and an emulsifier. Probably not going to add spicy to spicy. So I look at that and I think, I think sweet and sour would go with this really well. Okay, well, what dressing recipe is sort of sweet and sour? You know what? A basic balsamic vinaigrette is sweet and sour. And here's my recipe for that. 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of fig-infused balsamic. I'm choosing a sweeter balsamic on purpose, by the way, for this recipe. 1 tablespoon of honey from my bees, and then about 2 tablespoons of water and a teaspoon of salt. What I do is I put all of that in a mason jar and I shake it. Like, I shake it up pretty well. This one does not have garlic or anything like that in it, so you don't need to let it set around for, to mellow, basically. That's what I would make, and then I'll just pour it over the watercress kale salad and toss it up and serve it. It's that simple. And people love it. They're like, wow, that's the best salad dressing I've ever had. Sometimes I'll just shake it up and put it on the table in a mason jar and let them put it on their own salad. Sometimes we have people with kids over who don't like any salad dressing on their salad, so that's fine. This one goes also really well with a flat flavored salad like iceberg or romaine, like when you just have mostly crunchy lettuce leaves with no flavor. And it's also, if you add a tablespoon of mayo or sour cream to that and shake it up, it adds a creaminess to it and goes well on a corn-based salad. Like, I make a corn salad with pickles in it and fresh peppers because it's usually a summer salad. This is not like I boiled my corn salad. This is like I just cut it off a head of corn that was just harvested yesterday, sort of corn salad. So it's raw. goes really well with that, and that extra creaminess on the corn just adds a certain something. I don't know, but not too much cream. Not good. Okay, let's do another example. We are growing spinach this year at the Holler Homestead, and it's coming up. I hope. We'll see what the last 2 days of ridiculous rain did. But spinach salad, what's the core flavor? I find spinach to be almost nutty. It's got its own flavor that's pretty good, but it's a flat flavor. It's not an overwhelming flavor like you get from like a sweet pepper has a very peppery flavor, right? Okay, now what goes with a nutty flat flavor? Well, the answer is almost anything. So what am I in the mood for would be what I'd ask. And what would come to mind to me today would be something spicy and sweet. So a nice spicy sweet dressing. Well, what's a good spicy sweet dressing? Honey mustard is a good spicy sweet dressing, especially if you like spicy mustards, right? So here is a recipe for that. 1 tablespoon mustard, 2 tablespoons mayo, 1 tablespoon olive oil, 1 tablespoon honey, and 2 tablespoons water. And just add salt and pepper to that, and you shake it just like anything else. If you're feeling jiggy, you can add sour to that, by the way. You can sneak in some balsamic or something else that's a sour flavor. That makes a really good basic honey mustard. Now, not everybody adds mayo to that. I like the mayo in it. And that goes really well with the spinach. It draws out the flavor. I also like to add some sliced onions to a salad like that if I have them. So that is a honey mustard. Okay, so let's go back. So you get the basic concept, right? Back to the 5 basic elements. This is where you can get really creative and take your salad dressing making capacity to a whole new level. First up, when we went through element number 1, sour, I said vinegar. Well, what else could go? Like, sometimes you're out of vinegar. I mean, actually, I hope you're never out of vinegar, but you might be. What else might you have that you can use? Lemon juice comes to mind, or lime. Lime is a very different flavor. I've used pickle brine, like dill pickle brine or dill beet brine. And one of my favorites that adds an interesting twist to a salad dressing is caper juice. Now, I do not make homemade capers at this time. Can you imagine what it's like to harvest those tiny little things? Anyway, I do not currently make homemade capers. Someday I might try to grow them and make them. But the caper brine has a really interesting, almost olive-like flavor, even olive juice, same thing. So any of those can give you the sour. So when you're thinking back on your salad, you can think, okay, I have made vinaigrette 9,000 times in the last year. I'm tired of vinaigrette. I'm going to go caper-based instead. And in place of that balsamic vinegar in that recipe, you put caper juice. It'll totally change the salad. Or you might add garlic and let it, age for 24 hours. There's all sorts of things you can do with sour. And there are a lot of lemon-based recipes that I've come across. I'll share one with you in a bit. Spicy. This we did not examine really deeply the first time because we were just going for the concept. Mustard is spicy. Hot pepper sauce is spicy. Peppers are spicy. But you know what else is spicy? This does not have to be like hot burn your tongue element, right? It's just a spice. Pepper. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, pepper like black pepper, not peppers. Onions. Garlic. Basil. Oregano, rosemary, like any of those strong tasting spices and herbs fit really well as your spicy. So when you're making a dressing and you want to really bring out you might be eating a tomato and think basil goes well with tomatoes. Okay, if there's a tomato salad, go for it. Make a basil-based dressing. It'll be fantastic, right? Garlic and basil with tomatoes, it's almost like spaghetti sauce. Creamy. Mayonnaise is creamy. That's the easiest one that comes to mind. It's usually ready to go. Hopefully you make your own mayonnaise from scratch. I'll talk about how to do that in a different episode sometime. But you know what else is creamy? Is sour cream. Whipped up cream cheese, as a matter of fact. If you can thin it out, it's pretty creamy. Or, and I know this may come as a shock to some of you, half and half or cream. Sometimes I have been known to be out of mayonnaise. Mark's never too happy when we're out of mayonnaise and he wants a sandwich, but I've been known to sneak a little half and half in the salad dressing from time to time, and it works great. It adds a creamy zest to it that is really yummy. Number 4, sweet honey, sugar, brown sugar, sorghum, any of those things will add sweet. But one that was brought up to me today was jams and jellies and preserves. So, like those blueberry preserves that didn't quite set up right last year? Heck, that's your sweet for a salad dressing to go with a nice romaine-based salad, and maybe put a few strawberries on top if it's strawberry season, and apple chunks, and add a blueberry vinaigrette. That's your sweet. You put the blueberry preserves in there instead of honey. That sounds good to me. Anyway, and then the emulsifier. I tend to default to olive oil. I think it's just because when I was raised in the 80s, we went through the whole fat is bad for you thing, and we changed from lard to olive oil, and I'm not sure I ever went back. I do cook with lard and butter, but I've just gotten into the habit of frying things up in olive oil or grapeseed oil. Or here's one I found for a salad that's really good, and I got it at Home Goods or something. It was, they have their gourmet food area, closeout area. I found avocado oil. That was so good on salads. It was super. Anyway, but any infused oils too. If you're looking to add a garlic flavor to your salads and don't want to put fresh garlic on, you can get garlic infused oils, and they work great. It's just really oil. You can actually get away without oil if you have creamy, because it is kind of an emulsifier itself. But let's talk about why you need an emulsifier. What the emulsifier does is it holds everything together so that you're more likely to have an equal coating of the different flavors on the leaves of lettuce, and it kind of makes them stick to the lettuce. So when you oil a salad and then add salt and pepper and stir it up, the salt and pepper sticks to the leaves. If you put salt and pepper on a wet salad, water is an emulsifier, it kind of sticks but not as well. If you put it on a dry salad, the salt and pepper falls to the bottom and you never taste it. So the reason you have the emulsifier is when you shake that up, and I know when you have oil and water and vinegar mixed together, you have to keep shaking them for those things. But the oil does stick to the salt, the pepper, any other spices you've added. Does real well with mustard, by the way, in a honey mustard. And it's there to make an even coating. So just if you're in your kitchen and you've run out of olive oil, look around and look at what other oils you might have, and then in a pinch, you add mayonnaise to your salad dressing that day. So with our advanced knowledge of the 5 elements, let's do another example. What would you do if you had, and this is a typical summer salad at the Holler Homestead, sweet peppers, tomatoes, really old kind of chewy kale leaves, a little fresh corn, and the last of the season's spinach with some grated carrots. What would you do with that? What's the core flavor there? Well, you've got sweet coming from the tomatoes and the peppers. You've got a little bite in the peppers usually. And then you have kind of nutty flavor coming from the corn and the spinach. So it's sweet and nutty. And I look back up at the list of things, and I'm going, well, I've got sweet covered, so let's look at doing something that's maybe a little different. Let's really bring out the sour to complement the sweet, and let's add some spices that go well with those late maturing vegetables. And the one that comes to mind for me is sort of a lemon-based zest dressing. This is the lemon basil zest, basically. And you do this, you start with 2 tablespoons of lemon. I get about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice from 1 lemon, by the way, if I squeeze it out. Or if you don't have lemons, but you have lemon juice that you add to your canned tomatoes, you can use that too. It's not as good as fresh, but it is don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, as we like to say. I like to then mandolin up some onions. That means cut them real small. And put a teaspoon of salt. And I put that all together in a bowl and stir it up. So the onions, the lemon juice, and the salt stirred up, and just let it sit there for about half an hour. And then I add to that in a jar 2 tablespoons of olive oil, probably a good handful of sliced fresh basil leaves. And I cut those up pretty small. So I'll dice them up, not in little squares, but in little stripes. So what I do is I pile up the leaves, I roll them into a little tube, and then I slice them into strips, basically, that are about less than 1/8 of an inch. So 1/2 of an 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch wide or so. And then put 2 tablespoons of water in there, and I put it in a jar and shake it. And then I set it overnight in the fridge. And the reason I do that is to let the flavors all infuse. Now, if you do it that way, the next day, remove the jar from the fridge about 1/2 an hour before using it so that it reaches room temperature. The reason I don't leave it around at room temperature is I've got the fresh onions and the fresh basil in there. If they were dried, you could leave it out at room temperature and not really worry. But if they are wet going in, so like fresh basil, fresh onions have water in them still, they can or could possibly provide an environment for botulism to grow and create the toxin which makes us sick. So we don't want to do that. So if you're using fresh herbs in your salad dressing, always store them in the fridge. The way around that is basically to use dried herbs, but in general, I tend to put mine in the fridge anyway, and then bring them out about 1/2 an hour before the meal to bring to room temperature. And then I have a confession to make about this recipe. I don't always plan ahead. And often I'm sitting there looking at the tomato-based salad with the peppers and the corn and all that, right? And it's dinner time and I didn't make the dressing yesterday. It's just like Friday night. I didn't make the pepper garlic tea to spray on the plants in the garden. Grr. Okay. Anyway. So what I do is I will put the lemon, onions, and salt aside in the bowl. And I'll let it sit for 45 minutes. And I'll stir it about every 15 minutes. And what that's doing is you're basically making quick pickles of your onions. You're desiccating them. The vinegar and salt are soaking in and the moisture is getting pulled out. And it really equalizes the flavor of the lemon and the onions. You can do this with just salt, by the way. If you are going to put onions on a salad and you want them to be a little mellower, you salt them and let them sit for a little while. But the lemon juice or some vinegar really mellows the flavor of the onions, which makes me happier on my salad. And then you slice the basil the way I told you to, and you mix that in evenly with the salad. So you want those strips mixed throughout the salad. Then you make the rest of your recipe, which means you add the olive oil and water and shake it, and you pour it over the top. And it basically tastes the same. I'll say this, it's better if you've done it the day before, but again, it's pretty good if you haven't. So that is sort of an advanced way to use advanced ingredients. And just because I know you guys don't want to just hear from me, I hopped over on the TSP Zello channel, and I'll put a link to those guys in the show notes. And I was just like, hey guys, I have a crummy internet connection because I'm on vacation. But can some of you share with me your favorite homemade salad dressing recipes? And BD Hoot here shared one with me that was pretty good. And it actually affected my 5 elements because I hadn't thought of using this as a sweetener until he said something. And he said what he does is equal parts oil and vinegar, and then 2 spoonfuls of his favorite jam or jelly, and just shakes that up. And this is how you end up, if it's raspberry, with a raspberry vinaigrette. This is how you can end up with a blueberry vinaigrette. This is how you can end up with a blackberry or peach one. You see how that goes? I cannot wait to try out this recipe, and we'll totally be doing that when I go home. I do wish I had brought a jar of preserves because we have everything on hand here to make homemade salad dressing, and I am picking up some vegetables today on my way through town. Anyway, and then Curtis over on the Zello channel said he was in Japan and he wanted to make Caesar dressing, and when you're in another country you can't always find things like Caesar dressing on the store, and he said he's not sure why he did it this way. It wasn't it's missing some things that Caesar dressing would have. But what he did was he bought a tin of anchovies, and they must have been packed, I don't know what they were packed in, water or oil. And he basically used a mortar and pestle and made anchovy paste out of that. He added olive oil to it. He added an Italian spice mix that he could buy in Japan, which was probably basil, oregano, garlic, maybe pepper. It's that kind of typical Italian seasoning that you get. And he mixed that all up and left it in the fridge for 24 hours. And he said he did have it the first night before he left it in the fridge, and it was good. He said when he left it in the fridge for 24 hours, it was the best salad dressing he's ever had in his whole life. Now, of course, you have to like the flavor of anchovies to like this dressing. But if you like Caesar, you may find that you do like the flavor of anchovies. And he said he didn't add salt to it because there was probably already enough salt in those tinned anchovies to, have salt in the dressing. The other thing I asked him was, well, okay, so I'm looking back at my 5 elements at that, and I'm like, okay, what do we got? We've got an emulsifier, and we've got salty. And that's all we've got. And I'm thinking, like, usually when you make a good salad dressing, it has 3 elements. So I asked him, did you add vinegar to that, just out of curiosity? And he said, I probably did add vinegar of some sort to that. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But he did have, I suspect he's made it since. And that's one that we'll try again at the Holler Homestead and see how it tastes. Salad dressing, as I've said, super easy to make, really easy to work into your life and sort of bump up your quality of food that you're serving. And all you have to do is keep a few things on hand and you're all set. I mean, you only have to have 5 things. You need vinegar, right? Honey, something spicy like mustard. Most of us already have that. Something creamy like mayonnaise or sour cream. And something sweet like honey. I prefer honey over sugar myself, but, if you don't have honey, just use sugar. Use jams and jellies. Use sorghum. Use molasses. There's all sorts of ways. And really, Mark and I often have salad dressings that don't have any sugar added. I'll do that balsamic recipe I told you about. Sometimes I'm not feeling the sugar, and I will cut the honey out of it. It's still pretty good. I may, instead of the honey, I will add basil to it or garlic. It's really good that way. So that is what I have to say about the 5 elements of salad dressing. Okay. Next up, we have stories from the holler. I don't always do stories from the holler anymore, but I thought I wanted to talk to you a bit about what happened this week weather-wise. We, Friday, went into the weekend, and it started doing the spring Tennessee rain thing where it's like your shower is on as hard as it can go, but that's everywhere all at one time. So we have had torrential downpours starting Friday, and there were breaks on Friday. I think there were tornadoes a few places on Friday too. And then Saturday night, well, actually Friday night, Saturday morning, it started raining and nobody turned off the shower. And the shower kept going and going and going. And I mean, it did not let up. It would stop for 2 minutes and you go outside thinking you could get something done. And then the ducks loved it, but, we didn't love it because we were trying to pack and get out of town. And as a result of this rain, which then went on into Sunday all day, as a result of this rain, guess what, guys? It's flooding in Tennessee. It is not flooding like it did in 2010, but that weather pattern that happened this spring is the same weather pattern that happened the 2010 year, where we had a spring where it kind of got nice early and we were all tempted to put things out in our garden early, and then bam. That was the year I had what I called the tossed salad garden, because I was working a new plot and I had put all of my salad seeds out and squashes and all sorts of stuff. And I did it the day before it started raining, and the forecast said it was going to rain, like an inch. And it rained 14 inches. And my garden was standing water with an actual creek, runoff creek running through it that year. And when everything dried out, my seeds did germinate, but that was the year I had to be really good about identifying what was a weed and what was not a weed, because nothing was where it was supposed to be. And eventually, I just embraced the fact that things were going to grow where they wanted to grow. My inner control freak was not happy with that. But so this year, the same thing has happened again. I'm happy to say, though, the result of it hopefully isn't, this is what it means for my homesteading plans. I did not plant the rest of my seeds this weekend. I was going to go out in the rain on Saturday and just, put in the squashes and those sorts of things in the ground. I didn't do it because the rain caused other errands to take so much time that there was no way I could get that done, get my rear end packed, get the dog ready to go, and be out here. But also, I started looking at that rain pattern, and I remembered the tossed salad garden, and I thought, if I just wait till this whole thing is over, I can put the seeds in the already wet ground. It's not going to have given me a leg up to have them in 3 days later or sooner. So, we'll just go with the flow on this one, go out of town, come back, and I'll finish the last round of seeds in the garden. I was pleased to see, though, that as much work as I've done on my soil, I wasn't having pooling issues up there. And that's kind of amazing for the amount of rain that fell. It's probably only 6 inches that fell over the weekend, I'm going to guess. I don't know. I'll have to look at when I get internet again, I'll look at what the weather service says we had fall. But, and that's significantly less than that year of the Nashville flood. But still, when you get an inch in an hour, it pools. And in my garden, it just it rolls with it. So that was making me happy about the progress of the soil. So it was kind of like a frustrating day that never went as I planned, and we had way more rain than anybody was expecting, and it made it hard to get out of town. But hey, my soil's doing well, and that's really all I care about, right? The other repercussion of torrential downpours is there was a fella scheduled to come out and do a walkthrough on my property and just assess it for going off grid. So our long-term goal is not necessarily to go off grid, but we do want to reduce our dependence on municipal electricity over time if we can. And he's a guy who I am sure I will have on the show at some point. He lives in an off-grid home, and I saw him do a presentation on how he made his off-grid home solar powered without spending a mint. And he, for the first time when I watched his presentation, I understood solar on a much deeper level. And it was really nice to talk to him. And as we got to know each other, he said, I was like, well, you should start a consulting business. Because unlike other solar consultants, when this guy talks to you, he helps you understand it so that you can maintain it yourself, so that you can build it yourself. You don't have to pay a contractor like some exorbitant fee, like $20,000 freaking dollars to put in a battery bank and some panels. Like, he does it in a way that you're like, you know what? Especially me, I know how to wire a house anyway. Like, oh, okay, I could do that. And then if it breaks, I can fix that, which is probably the most important thing if you live on a homestead, right? Because it's not like some solar guy's ready to come out to your house at any moment. So he offered to do a consult for me, and we could go through and just sort of get my long-term plan set up, because I'm not ready to do a whole bunch of solar stuff, but decisions I make about remodels and all of those other things will be affected by the long-term plan. And for those of you into permaculture, like when you develop the plans for your property, you're thinking long-term so that your short-term decisions help you get to your long-term goal. It's the same with solar. It's like a permaculture approach to anything I'm doing in my power grid, basically, is going to be based on what's my long-term plan and how's everything feeding everything else. So that was going to happen Saturday. That got canceled, and hopefully I'll have it done soon. I'll tell you all about it when he does come out. I also, stories from the holler that aren't from the holler, a friend of mine, who I didn't expect to do this, bought a property in the country. And he's been living in the city with his wife for many years. And they just kind of got a hankering, I guess, to get out of the city. And they found a piece of land that they wanted to buy. And this is, it's not quite ex-urban. I'd still call it suburban, sort of. It's on, I guess Jack Spirko calls it the suburban fringe or the ex-urban fringe. I don't know. It doesn't look like they have a lot of, I haven't pulled up the zoning and that sort of thing, but it's sort of in that part of town that's transitioning into the rural, as the rural fringe is what I think Jack calls it. And this is, maybe 3 blocks in from that. So it's a little closer to town, but still, I think they can have chickens and some animals if they wanted to. And it's the size land you find there, it's like a little over 2 acres. It's got a beautiful old country home on it. It's got an old barn on it. So it's also got neighbors across the street, so they don't want to do anything that looks horrible, because then their neighbors will hate them. And as we all know, we don't want our neighbors to hate us, right? Anyway, so he bought this piece of land, and I got to go see it and did a walkthrough with him just because I wanted to help him see what he has there already. Because a lot of times, we buy land and we want to do all these changes, and then we find out later maybe we shouldn't have done what we do. So, and I think no matter how good you are, it's really helpful to have a couple people look at your land and throw ideas at you and just sort of talk through your goals. So their long-term goals are to not have to do a ton of maintenance. But I think he likes, the idea of getting some food off of his land and having it laid out in a way that's easy to maintain, but also, pretty. And next up, I wanted to share with you a little bit about my bees. So my lovely mother-in-law is in town with her husband, and they took us out to the Grand Ole Opry, which was so fun. And the next morning was sort of a GSD day for me. They were down in my guest cabin, and I walked outside in between writing assignments, looked up the hill at my wild beehive, and there was a tornado-shaped area of bees just flowing out of that hive. And I was fairly confident that was a swarm. I've never seen a swarm come out of the actual beehive. I've seen them after they leave. But they were sort of bearding on the hive and then tornadoing up to a tree where they gathered in a ball. And guess what? Nicole lost an opportunity to split a hive. Now, this should not have happened. I should have gone into that hive over the weekend, and I didn't because I had other priorities, and I lost the swarm, darn it. On the other hand, we just split that hive 5 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. So the interesting thing about that, though, is we caught that hive, I think, on 420 or 421 a year ago, and it had just split from wherever it came from. And this year it split itself on 419. So I have now been forewarned that, about the second week of April, I better take a good look at this wild beehive every year and make sure there isn't a queen in process, because there was a queen in process. What that means is the new queen is in the hive and the old queen moved on. So if the old queen was getting weak, at least it's the weaker bee that left, right? Anyway, that was kind of a bummer. I was looking forward to having a third beehive, and a friend of mine's coming Wednesday to split my other hive with me if it looks like we can. I have an extra bee suit for her, so I thought it would be fun to do that, and it looks like the weather will behave finally this week. Anyway, something I wanted to share with you about the show. Part of why Mark and I went on a workation up near Fall Creek Falls. It wasn't just to entertain our in-laws who are in town, or my in-laws, his parents. It was also to get away from some of the day-to-day, pay a farm sitter, and spend some time fixing or getting done things that are hard to get done if you're interrupted a lot. And one of the things I've been looking at deploying at Living Free in Tennessee is a premium content subscription option. And as I've been looking into it, I found a way to set up username, password that you can subscribe to premium content just right on my website. And I was going to deploy that. And then on my way here, I was listening to Jack Spirko over at the Survival Podcast, and he's playing around with a system called Patreon, where you can gather patrons for your creative content. Like patrons in the old days, the musicians, the composers had some rich person paying them. Well, this isn't exactly like this. This is more like somebody who wants to support your show gives you a monthly amount of, say, $1 or $3 or $5 or whatever. And in exchange for that, they get something from you. So the system it's kind of cool. I was poking around on it here when the internet was still going and started to set up a Living Free in Tennessee page, and then was just starting to set up, support levels and think through what the benefits would be for each level when the internet went out. So we'll be launching that. I've decided we'll launch on patreon.com first before we set up a user portal on Living Free in Tennessee. So if you've been interested in supporting the show and just aren't that into coffee, another way you're going to be able to support the show this week is over at patreon.com. I will drop a link in the show notes when it goes live. I should be on internet later today because I'm driving to the city and uploading this file and getting it out there. Anyway, we'll set up levels where you get access to premium content that's launched once a month. I'm thinking of a couple other benefits that might be kind of fun at different levels. So we'll have a few ways to support us, and you will get something in return. It doesn't just have to be out of the kindness of your heart. So that's at patreon.com. Just search for Living Free in Tennessee after Wednesday. It's probably going to take me to Wednesday to get that launched just because of the internet instability here. And if you do like the show and also love coffee, remember you can always grab a pound or two of premium coffee roasted by moi over at livingfreeintennessee.com. Just click on coffee, or this is new, hollerhomestead.com has had a facelift. We have had so many local people interested in our coffee that I thought it was time to relaunch that brand in support of the coffee, which is what it was supposed to be doing this whole time. But I ran out of time in December to redo all my websites and just redid one. And so we relaunched hollerhomestead.com, still building out some pieces of it, but people can order coffee there too. It's up to you if you prefer to do it one place or another. Last but not least, I have an announcement from our friends over at Cider Hollow Farms. He has put the rest of his comfrey on a closeout sale this week. So if you're in Tennessee or nearby Tennessee and want to get your hands on some awesome comfrey and get it in the ground in the next 3-4 weeks, sooner is better. He's giving an extra $1.50 per plant off. It's a sale on his website at ciderhollow.com. And if you use the coupon code LFITN, that's Living Free in Tennessee 5, LFITN 5, you'll get an additional 5% off anything you order. So guys, it's the time to close the show, right? This spring has been the usual whirlwind. And it's funny, when we get into spring, I'm always like, oh my gosh, things are so busy. Okay, this happens every spring. It's been the usual whirlwind. And we've had lots of things happen out at the holler that were not on the original plan. So we've had some shifting priorities, and I think it was really well worth it early this year to sit down and set our long-term primary goals of making time for recreation and fun, taking care of our personal health, that means mental health and physical health, and building our local stable income. Because as things have unpredictably and predictably changed, we've been better positioned to just make the decisions of how we're adjusting our day-to-day focus. And that's really helped me navigate this spring a little better than former ones. I mean, even like down to, I was going to plant the rest of my garden and then it rained 1,000,000 inches all at one time. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to clean the living room, pack my clothes, get out of town so I can get some web development stuff done. It's just, you do what you got to do, right? So it's been a fun spring. We are starting here in Tennessee to transition into the hotter weather. So you're going to start hearing about the next phase of food preservation in the weeks to come. I'm going to hit you with that next canning episode, How to Can Peaches, which is the second in a series of 8 episodes on home canning. I also have a friend who's looking to work with me on videotaping this canning course, and we'll put that over on Patreon at one of the support levels. I'll have some free resources related to that as well. So with that, I hope you take advantage of this last week of April to get some things going, get out there, and make it a great week. Oh my goodness. You know what I just realized? The song of today is called The Flood. It's by my band Sauce. And I just realized that it is coinciding with the flood that we're having in Tennessee. Anyway, I thought I'd pop back in and tell you about this song. This song is about a flood taking a person far away from their current life so that they could grow into a better life. And I had chosen it for today just because we're transitioning into a new part of the year. But it's kind of funny that we just got torrential downpours and flooding in Tennessee. Anyway, this is Sauce, the Flood. It is not one of my best recordings ever, but I thought it was appropriate, content-wise. Maybe someday we'll re-record this one if I get the group back together. Anyway, go back. Remember, you can use the dramatic things that happen in your life to make it better, and this song's all about that. This is The Flood by Sauce.
Beautiful.